So thank you for joining us. We have an interesting topic. Usually when we come up with a topic, I'm the compulsive one in our duo, in case you haven't noticed. And I come up with a few topics and then give them to Richard and he'll pick one and then we flesh it out from there. But this time I decided to try to let go of some control. And which will be the last time I do. No. And so I said, what's a good topic? And I love this topic that you came up with, which is, I never would have thought of this. The topic is,
what is it? Oh,
the
why?
topic is, why does Garuda have a snake in his mouth?
A snake in his mouth, yeah.
And then he gave me that topic, and being me, I said, and what does that have to do with anything? So that was my addition to the title. And so as we started really thinking about this over the last month, it started to be really a profound sort of study and an interesting study of what that's all about, going everywhere from the symbolism that is part of all of the iconography and the mythology in India, Buddhism, in Greece, etc., and also just the nature of human experience, which is reflected very much in the mythology and iconography always. So we thought we'd start off with, because Garuda is not as well-known a character as, say, Ganesh or Shiva or Saraswati or Tara, some of the others that, he's up there with some of those, but Garuda is one that a lot of people don't know as much about. When you live in Asia, you start noticing Garuda everywhere because his image is part of the seal in Thailand, Indonesia, India, and he's the eagle, and he is the sort of quintessential courageous, quiet background support.
Yeah, and I think eagles are pretty much everywhere. I mean, as you travel around the planet, and they're pretty impressive. We even have them way up here, and occasionally they come down and
say hello.
They say hello. They dive bomb us, but they're impressive. And I think they deal with snakes a lot. And they are truly, some of the only opponents to snakes. Yeah.
Yeah. And they are, because they are so big, because they are so stately, they, in pretty much every culture, have the reputation of being sort of the king of birds, or the most stately. And so one of the stories and sort of the origin of Garuda is very interesting. And so we thought we'd tell you a little about that. So Garuda is the son of a woman named Vinata. And
Vihata.
Vihata. I thought it was Vinata.
Oh,
anyway.
I'll take either one. Vinata.
It's V something or other, I think whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so Vinata and
Vinata
and her sister Kadru was Vinata's younger sister, and they were both married to a rishi by the name of Kashyapa. And in those days, some of the rishis had many wives, particularly him. I think he had.
Oh, he had 40, 50.
Yeah, 40,
different,
50.
Yeah, he was kind of the progenitor of not just mankind, but of most of the gods and rishis and species. So he had a big job.
Yeah.
And in fact, Vishnu was one of his kids,
Yeah.
which is like, what?
Yeah.
And so,
So they were sisters, and they both married him. And Vinata, who turns out to be Garuda's mother, was the elder sister. And the names, what their names mean is kind of interesting. So Vinata means humble, but you also were saying something about kind of,
someone doesn't, is not proud of themselves.
yeah,
They're humble.
yeah.
And so they don't,
They're not a dominant character.
yeah.
Yeah.
Which is,
And that,
in her case,
yeah.
useful for
And
the story.
that comes through a little bit even in Garuda. But the sister, Kadru, was kind of, her name is, sort of associated with a very beautiful color. And she was the younger sister, so she was sort of more, sort of a little bit more pleased with herself in certain ways. And there was an extreme sibling rivalry even before they got married to the same husband. But then, of course, being married to the same husband, some of this rivalry sort of augmented a little bit. And so there are all these stories of ways that displayed itself. But one of the stories is that they both were given a boon by their husband, by Kashyapa, and he said, what would you like to have as your boon? And the younger sister said, well, I would like to have 1,000 sons. And so the older sister, who's a little more, sensible or cautious, said, well, I'd like 2 sons, but I would like both of my sons, each of them, to be more powerful than all of the 1,000 sons of my sister. And so he granted them the boon. And so the younger sister, Kadru, gave birth to 1,000 eggs. And
Yeah, these were not necessarily humans.
Yeah.
I always think of them
as humans.
But
And then Vinata gave birth to 2 eggs. But part of the catch was they had to wait 500 years for the incubation period. And they waited and waited. And then Kadru, who was older and kind of wanting to be the one in charge, got a little bit impatient. And so she broke one of her eggs open, one of the 2 eggs open before it was.
she was greedy in a way.
Well, yeah. She was.
That's what.
She wanted her kids to be better, is part of it.
Yeah, it's all like,
Yeah.
kind of competition in royal families.
Yeah,
They
which we read about or
gladly
see on
kill them.
Netflix or whatever. And so she opened one of the eggs early, and I forget the name of the son. It's Garuda's brother came out, and he was premature, and so he was not quite fully formed, but he was completely, coherent and actually quite able, and was a little bit annoyed with his mother for having not let him come to full gestation. And so he scolded her and immediately left and went to become the charioteer for the sun, which is a good task. But he was always a little bit annoyed by that. So
He was
he
always
said,
angry at his mom.
he was always angry at his mom, and he said, the one thing I'm really asking you to do is to not open the other egg. Let that one come to fruition. And so she waited and waited, and the 500 years passed, and the egg opened on its own, and out steps Garuda. So she was quite pleased with that. And meanwhile, the sister had the 1,000 eggs hatch, and they were nagas, or snakes. And so that is the beginning of the relationship of Garuda to the snakes, because his older brother had already left, and he was the half brother of all of these serpents, the 1,000 serpents that belonged to Kadru. And after a while, things were carrying on, and the mother of Garuda, Vinata, she was out in the yard this one day, and her sister came out, and they looked in the sky, and they saw this beautiful vision of this celestial horse that was crossing the horizon. And it was this celestial white horse. And they then went back and were talking about what a beautiful vision that was, and they set a wager with each other, because Vinata said, it's just the most beautiful, totally white
Yeah,
creature.
Uchashravan, and it's the white,
Yeah,
beautiful white.
beautiful
Horse.
white horse. So
I've
they
probably seen it.
yeah, yeah, in your dreams at least.
Yeah, I'm in the sky.
And so they
Yeah.
made a wager that with each other, that they, because the second sister, the younger sister, said, no, it's not completely white. The tail is black, but the rest of the horse is white. And they had a little bit of an argument, and then said, well,
Oh, yeah, because she wanted her sister, because the horse was white.
yeah.
But she wanted her sister to
Well, the bet was
to bet against her.
Yeah.
And then because she had a plan or
Yeah.
a scheme.
Yeah. And the bet was that whoever won the bet was going to have to be in servitude to the other for eternity.
Yeah.
And
that's
so
all.
Kadru was really set on it being a black tail. So the next day, in the evening, before the celestial horse arose, Kadru bade all of her 1,000 sons that were serpents
Yeah. Dark serpents.
to attach themselves to the tail, which actually was white. And then they would look like this black tail, and she'd win the bet. And then,
Both are cheating, but
yeah.
what does that matter? Yeah. Nice.
And so she was cool with that, but some of the sons refused to do it, and in some of the stories it's all of the sons refused to do it, but in other stories it's just some of them. And when the sons refused, she cursed them, and they were going to be human or Naga sacrifice. So some of them decided, okay, we'll go along with it. And they attached themselves to the tail. The horse flew across the sky, had the black tail, and so then Vinata said, oh, I guess I was wrong. So she was then the servant of her younger sister for quite a while. And this is then where the sort of competition between Garuda and snakes augments, because here he's got all these half siblings to begin with, and then his mother is being asked by the younger sister and by the serpents to do all kinds of things for them, and she turns it over usually to Garuda, who then has to do all the things for the serpents,
To help his
etc.,
mom.
to help his mom out. So this goes on for a while. And then after some time, he decides, well, maybe he could negotiate. So he goes to the Nagas and he says, is there anything that I can do so that we can help you so that we're then out of this duty to be your servants? And they thought about it a bit, and they came up with the idea of, what we need is immortality. So if you can go and get us
The nectar,
Yeah.
Amrita.
Yeah.
And so so Garuda said, sure. And at that time, the Amrita was under Indra's control, although occasionally the problems are coming with that. And so Garuda decided he would steal the nectar from Indra, king of the gods, and and even if he made the Nagas immortal, if they actually got the nectar, he didn't care because he just wants to help his mom out. So
And over this time of being in servitude, he also had developed this sort of attitude of service, and of not only wanting to serve his mother, but seeing the importance of being one of service. And so he wanted to be able to not be constantly distracted by, can you go do my laundry for me? But he wanted to, I guess snakes do laundry, but he wanted to be able to really fulfill what he felt was
yeah,
his dharma.
he was big-hearted, that's for sure. And
And he was very powerful, and so he got, and it's a long story about how he got the nectar, but he did get the amrita.
he scared all the dogs there. I mean, the gods.
Gods.
Why did I say dogs? Oh, you spell it backwards. He scared them, and they saw this immensely powerful being who was much more, he was the same as Shiva's dancing, the destruction coming. And so basically he defeated all of the gods, and they were afraid, and he got the nectar, and he carried it down in a pot. They have lots of nectar transport pots, and which you probably have some, very close to you. And he carried it down, and he placed it, but he worked out with Indra. He said, I just got to have this and take it. And Indra thought, oh, okay. But he left it open that Indra could come and steal the nectar back, because that wasn't part of the deal.
Mm-hmm.
And this way, protect the universe from having, these extremely powerful snakes. And so he came down and he placed it on the kusha grass. And so this kusha is the straw that a good yoga asana is actually constructed out of.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a sacrificial grass, and you have to line it up. And he placed it down, and then he said, here. And then he had won. He had delivered the nectar, and
Then the snakes released him from his duty.
and the snake said, yes, you are released, and all is well. And then Indra, and the snakes are just about to take it, but they're like pausing, which is turns, and Indra swoops down, and he grabs the pot of nectar, and it's probably an old-fashioned pot, so it was a little bit, leaking or something, and he flies back up to heaven with the pot of nectar, and then all the snakes are like, whoops, but they see that the grass was moist, and so they start licking the grass to get any drop, because even a drop of nectar, it will do the job. It doesn't take like gallons of it, and this is how they got split tongues. They didn't have split tongues, but they were licking this sharp grass, and their tongues split.
And then in many of the stories, they then
These are true stories.
yeah, they are true stories. In many of the historical accounts, they
Ask any scientist. Right?
they some of them then crawled out of their skins to become, transformed into some of the more powerful nagas that are around. And so the naga plays this important role in this whole configuration of Garuda. But he always had, and it's really different the way it's talked about in some of the different myths, and we like to interpret it in the way we like to interpret it, obviously. But, that Garuda can be seen to be carrying a snake, and some people see that as sort of attacking snakes, and others see it as more just sort of becoming a unified force with a snake or joining together with a serpent. Because the serpent, and we'll possibly talk about this at the end, has incredible symbology also, both in yoga and in
Ordinary life.
ordinary life and mythology. And so the reason he's got the snake in his mouth is that they're his half brothers, and that
He's also, much of the time, quite aggressive.
yeah,
Just like an actual eagle is pretty, they fight
yeah,
and they kill the snakes. But if the amazing thing is that Garuda, being so devoted to his mother and stuff, he doesn't kick them out, even though he's killing them. He doesn't kick them out of his heart, which is very advanced. Talk about the Brahma Viharas, that he's able to see these destructive, poisonous, harmful creatures who are basically the confusion of language itself. And he has this pure anger rather than this selfish anger. And he's able to defeat them.
yeah.
And
Which is, really characteristic of who he is as this yogi, in a sense, that is there
as a servant.
as a servant.
Yeah. And so he becomes the, and so when he first stole the nectar, he didn't imbibe in him for himself. Like most people, you get a pot of nectar, it's like, oh, let me just test it to make sure it's, and
The
you just
real deal.
yeah, I'll just take a drop of it. But he had no interest in his self-conception. I'm going to make myself immortal or enjoy the fantastic flavor, the joy of the nectar. And so Vishnu was very impressed by that, and so he made Garuda his primary vehicle. So Vishnu has to travel, any long distances. Garuda is his. He flies on Garuda,
So he's
and paradoxically, Vishnu's other complete selfless servant is Nagaraj, the king of all the Nagas, who incarnates, all the time as his younger brother or his older brother, or manifests as the ground he's sitting on, and so he's got these two selfless servants
yeah.
that somehow have a problem with each other.
But then also don't.
They also don't,
They also,
even though
they're intertwined.
Yeah, they're intertwined.
And so one of the amazing things is that that the story continues, but that if you start looking at it from the yogic perspective of what would it feel like to have a snake in your mouth, and what would it feel like when you have a snake in your mouth to have the posture and form of Garuda, which
or
is
the snake.
yeah, or the snake. And so, to us, that's really part of why it matters that Garuda has a snake in his mouth in terms of yoga practitioners and just everyday life. And I think your thoughts about what the snake feels like and represents and the wings would be interesting
Oh.
to hear about a little bit.
Yeah. And this comes from, I guess yoga practice. Because the snake is related to apana, as we might know, which is apas, water, that which flows down, slithers on the ground, and and is related in terms of the pelvic floor to the coccyx, and to the serpent, and And so, let's say in downward dog, if you're doing downward dog and you have the patience to stay, for 1,000 years, to really feel,
Or at least 10 breaths.
yeah, at least 10 breaths, like five being, your yeah,
Yeah, your
state.
quota.
Yeah. What happens is that the pelvic floor wakes up and is fully online. And we shouldn't confuse that with your squeezing it or not squeezing it, but it's just stimulated, uh, and that therefore the relationship between the pubic bone and the coccyx is stimulated. And so when you do that, and you're doing it meditatively, the central channel, which is the whole idea in Ashtanga Vinyasa Yoga, starts to open, and simultaneously you feel in your mouth what's called Kachari Mudra, which means to move, or to, if you're Garuda, to fly off in ka, or space. And so this is when your tongue, which is the whole language function, represented by this whole thing, the tongue becomes quiet and it merges with the palate as if you were tasting something or smelling something delicious. So you just go, mmm, and the tongue merges with the palate, and you're simultaneously feeling the importance of the apanavayu in the pelvic floor. And so it's almost like your pelvic floor comes into your mouth, which if you tell that to a new yoga student, they think
That's their last class.
that's disgusting, and you people are really sick. And we say, well, yep, but look around, and so you actually are tasting and smelling the pelvic floor.
And it's the real unification of what seemed to be completely counter and
At first,
opposite patterns within the body. And it's interesting that this snake metaphor, really the kundalini in the base of the body rising up, is represented by this feeling of the central channel awakening.
Yeah, and so the opening of the lower back of the diaphragm, kidney wings. So those wings are Garuda's wings. Okay. If you try to claim them, at first we go, oh, I am Garuda, and then they, well, and so what Garuda does is he sees the mind making, the Nagas making their natural assumption. Oh, I am a Naga, or I am important, or I am the king, I am the queen, I am me, 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 me. But it's, and he doesn't try to stop that. And so when you open the kidney wings, you're opening Garuda's wings in the lower back, and this causes the apana vayu to pull back and up to enter the central channel. Mm-hmm. And that's like ABCs of yoga. I mean, like every, and then you can really fill up. So you're filling the lower back of the lungs but your heart is open. Normally, the apanavayu closes the heart. The pranavayu, which opens the heart, shuts off the apana. And so the two are like in opposition, this eternal battle. You're going to have an open heart, or you're going to be grounded like a snake in the practicalities of evolution and biological life. Mm-hmm. And you say, well, I want both. And normally, even people who wherever there's any kind of objectification of Garuda or Vishnu or yoga, or I even objectify my image of the central channel and say, I'm getting the central channel because I'm out of here. All of that actually closes the heart because you've made an object that you then want. But if you can see that that's what the mind naturally does, your heart doesn't actually have to close, even though this potential is extremely strong to want to become the God of gods, the Prime Minister of Prime Ministers, or anyway, you could
The leader of leaders.
leader of leaders, yeah,
To be mild.
yeah, of all universes,
Yes.
not just why stop with just this teeny little planet, and so the wings of Garuda opening, the heart stays open at the same time, and that's amazing, and that's the whole teaching in that's what the Ashtanga Vinyasa is all about. And that's what these myths are teaching. Although it's so slippery to lose it, because as soon as you go, ooh, I feel such pleasure. And that's why you got to keep practicing. So in the Vinyasa Yoga, when we do Ekam, in which
I can get out of
I'm not going to stand up and do it. So you're inhaling, you go, okay, you think, oh, these are arms. They're not arms, they're Garuda's wings. And you have to reach with sincerity. If you're not sincere, you're proud. But if you're not, and the power, you just feel it like, oh my God. And the wings go up, 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 but the heart is still open. And then back to samastitihi or into dve, which is the same, you're feeling, you're tasting in your mouth. Even though you have a split tongue from licking the grass, you're going, And it's very sweet, but it's very practical and grounded. And so somehow you're able to fulfill the one of the more difficult of the Brahma Viharas, which is to upekshanam with even the most difficult of beings, which perhaps is even you.
for yourself, not
For
only for
yourself.
others.
Yeah. Yeah. That your ego is even bigger than certain politicians, potentially.
And so, as we practice, the fascinating thing is to take these images like this one with Garuda and to really feel, to visualize, and that's something we talk about often, to visualize and sort of embrace within your own embodied experience what it would feel like to be Garuda, which is, this stately, strong, courageous, swift, practical, grounded, but passionate, and able to be non-grounded in the air but still be grounded being, with a vast heart, and at the same time, have this serpent in your mouth representing this open channel within your own body. And so this, however some of these images fit for you, if you sort of play with them a little bit, you can go into these different levels of experience within your own body, and it's in a way a sense that that's part of the function of these, is to take you out of your mind where you've decided here are the wings and here's the central channel, etc., which is very important to be able to know and identify.
Get you going, yeah.
But then to let it go, to
let it dissolve.
Let it dissolve.
That's what's so hard, because I think, my interpretation of the Ganesh mythology is the correct one.
Yeah.
Or my mantra is better than your mantra, and My religion's better. And so and all of this is represented in the uh, functioning of the snakes.
Yeah.
You know, the competition between lineages, between religions, the even, you know, my artwork is better than your, and that's why one of the nice things, there's so much that is transmitted, you know, through, you know, the traditional art about Garuda, or, you know, channels, or but the no two are actually the same, which is kind of like, whoa.
Yeah.
They're all unique, and yet the tendency then is, oh, well, I reject all of it. It's all just stupid because it's all impermanent. It's all, and that too is a,
Get you nowhere.
yeah, Garuda would not do that either.
Yeah.
And
And I think one of the fascinating parts of the Garuda and the snake relationship also is, you know, the nature of snakes to have a certain amount of time. And we run into this here living in the jungle where, and I'm looking back to see if anything's creeping up behind us. Hopefully not. But where there, you know, you often just find a snake skin on the road. And it's this, you know, three-dimensional sort of reminder of sort of a metamorphosis that is possible when you have been in a certain aspect of yourself or your experience in the world, and then you slither and rub and have some, you know, sort of movement to get out of, you know, the sort of stuckness.
stuck in, yeah, stuck in the past,
Stuck in the past.
stuck in the desire, the, yeah, stuck in the images, stuck in the religion.
Stuck in the religions. And so it's fascinating to look at the, this image of Garuda with the snake from all these different angles, and almost in a Gestalt sort of way, you know, to put yourself, like I am you know, as the snake, and seeing the scene of being carried along, and by Garuda in the complete opposite sort of environment from what you're used to, where you're hiding in the grass, but here you are soaring above treetops. And this really is, you know, this sort of rejuvenation and this idea of manifesting oneself and then becoming not becoming stuck by one's own manifestation, which is really easy to do. Oh, I've, you know, achieved everything I need to achieve, therefore that's it. And I'm going to keep achieving. Rather than that, just I'm going to be. I'm going to experience in a way I've not experienced before. So that's an amazing part of this imagery also, is the sort of interplay of those two half siblings, the snake and the eagle, out of necessity taking on each other's perspective from time to time.
Yeah. And it's interesting, even the thing, I am going to do this.
Yes. Who?
Who are you talking about?
And where are you going?
That's where we switch from an eagle to an owl. Who? Who's going to do that? And
But it's interesting to, Richard and I sometimes do this, or I force you to sometimes, where, you know, we shift perspectives, where, you know, it's especially true in the kitchen, where there are higher shelves or something, and, you know, I'm like standing on my tiptoes, trying to get something off of the very top shelf, and Richard comes up and just takes it for me. And so what we sometimes do is I say, you know, just squat down until your eyes are at the same level as mine and see what it looks like, see what the world looks like. which is quite different. Because, like, if I stand on a stool and look in the kitchen or look out in a crowd, and if I'm in a crowd, I'm just looking at people's armpits, whereas you're like
Looking at the tops of
looking at the tops of their heads. So this is really how, when I've been thinking of this is what these two opposite patterns are helping us do. And then also this idea of the snake and the central channel, how it relates to the swara and the delicate flow of one side, the other side, and then the Sushumna Nadi, which is an interesting idea, how the perception and the sort of awareness.
Yeah, the swara, the sun and the moon, and and so the sensations in the body, which we tend to ignore when we get lost and we go off in fear or desire or even, self-infatuation with. We are actually ignoring that which is immediate, which is the vibrance, or whatever. Even if I call it something that's dangerous, we'll call it spanda shakti, with the vibrance of divine shakti. And then, of course, I have pictures of that on my phone and stuff, and that's why I think it is. But no, then I'm ignoring it, having. But the label sometimes helps me to get started, and so that's my practice of my religious practice, which all of us, even though we're not religious, we're extremely religious, and that lets you focus, and then it's the courage of the open heart, but the humor of the snakes. Snakes they're good jokesters. And that allows you then to go to a deeper level where you can actually start to observe what's going on, and then you start then to observe whenever the mind wanders off. Oh, that was that wonderful vibration I just felt. Oh, I just got the chills. The hairs stood up all over my body. I'm going to pull out my phone and get a selfie of that. And how quick the selfie mode happens.
Even before we knew about selfies. Now we just know what to call them.
Well, yeah. Well,
and we get documentation.
As we know, the iPhone existed at the Garden of Eden.
It's true.
We're just learning what's really the true myths. Okay. Yeah. And so that's why the movement to take this to the yoga mat, and both in sitting practice, pranayama practice, asana practice, but then keep going. And it's interesting.
It's pretty wild.
And we're just getting started.
Yeah. I thought that we're about out of time, but we wanted to. I'm thinking it might be kind of interesting also to talk a little bit about the way snakes sort of stir up a sense of fear in a lot of people. In some of the Buddhist tradition, and certainly here in Thailand, the snakes, stir up fear. I'm thinking of that cobra incident we had, but then also, there is this sense that the snakes are sort of the local deities, or the local
Protectors. Also.
And
yeah, if you go to any wat or temple here, there'll be snakes outside, at the entrance to the temple. Sometimes three-headed snakes, sometimes,
statues, usually.
Oh, statues, yeah.
Yeah.
There'll be the real snakes, and then there'll be statues of the snakes, yeah. And it's all more like, and because you have to have that. There's something about the way the mind constructs that's so scary that you got to face that which is the scariest thing um, in order to do that. And what that is, well, let's take a look. But it's quite beautiful. The representations are quite beautiful. But then you actually meet the real snake, uh, particularly like a cobra or python, or there's some strange ones. There's this visceral response to like, whoa, which is probably a good. It's built in.
It's a built-in good response for
Yeah, a
sure.
built-in good response. There's like abhinivesha. I'd rather not like uh, do that. You know, you know, death is so profound, and I have no problem with it. But let's postpone it a few more years if we can.
But you really see when people, you have that initial response, and then if you keep your distance and let the serpent do its thing, they a whole sort of transformation starts to take place. We had an incident here where it was kind of just a little bit of a rainy period, and someone was coming to help fix a broken window at our house. And as we looked out the window, we heard the truck pull up, and the truck was playing all this hip music, and it was kind of loud and everything. The guy gets out, and then he didn't come and knock on the door, and we were thinking, well, what's going on with that? And
Yeah, the music stops, and
we looked out to see, and the guy saw me looking at him, and he's down at the bottom of the steps, and he's going like this, which was immediate international language for there's a cobra down here.
and it was a big one.
And it's a big one.
It was a king cobra that was
Yeah.
probably 2.5 meters or
Yeah.
more.
Long.
Yeah, it was and
But
their reaction
they
was
sort of
like,
made some noise, stepped back, and let it go away. And it had probably, because of the rain, had come into shelter
into our garage.
into the garage. And then as they stepped back and let it go, it slithered off and probably lives right around here anyway. But, it's the kind of thing where they didn't have a stronger visceral response than that. And then, of course, for weeks after, we're creeping down the stairs every time, making sure not to get bitten by a snake. But, that does seem to be this thing where snakes are symbolic of doing that with so many other things in our life, where we reject them right off the bat. And the final thing I really feel really good about with Garuda that has been hitting me is that part that you told in the story where he was so truthful and honest, even though he didn't care about being truthful to the serpents, that he was going to not necessarily let them keep the nectar, but he was so devoted and truthful and honest that Vishnu said, hey, you're the one to carry me about. And that quality, this quality of integrity of the central channel, but also the quality of courage and honesty and servitude, those are just such important qualities in these times. And having a connection to one's own central channel, or holding on to something that there is a little bit of fear about, can really ground you enough that those qualities don't become blown out of proportion in your mind. And that's a really important part of this story of Garuda, is that he has these phenomenal qualities But like his mother, he remains humble. You know?
Yeah, he waits at the door.
He waits at the door.
Yeah.
So, did you find any chant or
No.
no?
Yeah. There are lots of chants, but yeah, I won't
Yeah.
expose them.
Okay.
The Gayatri can be done
Yes.
for
Yeah.
Garuda.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's.
So, to wrap it up, we would recommend that you stay grounded, find ways to do that, feeling like Garuda, these strong claws and feet connected to earth as you raise your arms and engage in life, and that you find ways of tapping into this embodied sense of spaciousness that's deep in the core of the heart, which allows the whole central channel and this connection of pelvic floor to palate to really help keep you in the moment.
And I was just thinking of. You can't really get a therapeutic. I mean, like when you travel or something, you could bring a dog with you or a puppy,
Yeah.
or something
Companion
sweet,
animal.
a companion animal. But I don't think it's going to work with
With a
cobras and
cobras or,
poisonous snakes.
yeah. But you can have
Though,
them in your mind.
yeah,
They haven't figured out what we have in our minds yet.
yeah. They'll be scanning
They'll be scanning.
that soon.
So,
So, Ekam. All you have to do is say Ekam to one who does Ashtanga Vinyasa. You just go Ekam, and
the whole thing falls into
the whole thing
place.
works.
So
There's
please
the mantra.
keep practicing, keep reading, keep studying, keep asking questions. We love getting questions and try to incorporate things from questions we get into these talks. So please be in touch with us. And we're so happy always to have you with us. So thank you so much.
It's good to see you.